So, everyone, ready? Now, we were left with very important questions, and I think it's our obligation that we leave the first question sort of to the future.
Oh, I need 10
who are
minutes.
affected, pardon? Who are affected by all these important questions, and I asked the Peter Drucker finalist, Besmira Selmi. Where is she? Yeah, here. To ask the question. No. Is the... over there.
So, my question is, because Peter Drucker was did not limit management only in business, but he thought that management permeates all of society. I was wondering, because school is one of the primary institutions for society in which basic literacy and development of one's strength can take place, I was wondering, how can government make the schools more developed in that aspect? Because people, especially in the southeastern Europe, are not taking the education they are supposed to take and the skills they are supposed to take from school to be able to continue a prosperous life and to succeed economically and have a good civic life.
Okay, thank you. Very important question. Educational systems, are we preparing the youth for the past, actually? And I would address to the last panel this question. Who wants to take up this question? Probably you, Carlotta?
I can take it, but yeah. Well, I think first thing is that education needs a complete revolution. We are making mass production education that begins in kindergarten and then people come out in different stages, but it's all one long thing. Everybody talks about lifelong education. When is it going to happen? That's enough. We have to allow people to come in from work into the classroom and participate and get everybody together. We need people to stop studying and go work and then come back study and then go work and then come back study, because the whole education system throws sacks of answers at people and they don't have any questions. So we need people to have experience. And that means I'm talking about the structure. The other thing is that we have been teaching people to learn to answer questions. We need people to learn to ask questions, because we now have it all in Google. So people don't know how to ask, they don't know how to evaluate alternative answers. So the content or the style of education also has to change. And then we also have to recognize that there are so many other things to learn that are not typically educational in the formal way. So we need like an education industry. It's growing, but it's not growing fast enough to do all sorts of other things that have to do with the quality of life. Because we also have the old ideas that you went to school, you got something, then you got a job, and you spent it for life. That's no longer true.
Carlotta,
so a lot of changes.
Just let's be brief, yeah? Short intervention, and then we turn to the audience.
Well, I agree with that 100%, but I think we should recognize that it's happening all over the world. In America, that kind of education now is part of just about every major university in America. It's project-based, it's involved, it's global. They're teaching kids value creation, the kind of things we're talking about here. And the upcoming wave on top of that is online and electronic-based education, which I'm personally very excited about, because for the first time, we actually have seen curricula that can help move the dial for really poor kids. So it's happening.
I agree.
I think it could happen faster, frankly, in Europe than it is, because it's a big movement in America.
Okay, thank you very much. Back to the audience. 2 questions from the groups. Who wants to ask a question? One, over there. Be please brief. 1, 2 sentences. Do you have a mic? Oh, okay. It's coming there.
Yeah, my direct question to you, are the management business school, the contents of the courses fit for purpose for 22nd and 21st century. But I am concerned that Peter Drucker's, your ideas and ethos not there for the future.
Okay. Second question.
Tony O'Driscoll with Duke. One of the big insights throughout the last 2 days is the notion of synchrony of institutional innovation with technological innovation and pointing it towards inclusive prosperity. The question is, in today's world, even if a government official wants to take us in that direction, does the transparency in society that might want to go in a different way make it harder to do than in the 1930s? So are we in this kind of wicked problem where society itself doesn't see beyond, the next meal, and that causes a little bit of disenfranchisement to go in the wrong direction?
Okay, thank you very much. 2 questions for 2 panels each. Let's start with the first one on leadership. The first question goes to this one. Who wants to respond? Sydney, yeah?
I could say something on the question about schools, business schools, management, education, specifically on the first question. Business schools are a mixed bag. Like many organizations, most business schools keep doing the same things over and over again, and I think we're in the early stages of actually almost a revolution in how business school education is going to occur. There are some examples out there. I think the Rotman School is a good one. I think there are a few things here and there that are going on where there are changes that are happening. The problem is that we have a model that requires, I think almost without exception, a series of courses on topics that don't need to be taught in the same way, whether it's finance, accounting, operations.
So it needs a cleaning up.
Marketing, absolutely. I also think that professors, and I am a professor, should not have a monopoly on creating the curriculum. I think every student should have to create their own course and then figure out how to teach it, bringing in any innovative way they can, any talent they need to teach it.
A good proposal that we can take away.
Let's hope.
Thank you very much. Relating to the second question on sort of the cognitive frame in society, panel 2, who wants to?
Yeah, go.
Okay, so it's about making governmental institution more fit for the future, as far as I understood it. I think we need huge reforms. I think there are countries that have already overcome those obstacles. So my prime example is Sweden. So Sweden was stuck in a bureaucratic mess, if I may say so, in the what was it, late 90s or so. And then I think it was this guy, Göran Persson was the prime minister, and he showed how governmental institutions could overcome that and help to create a more entrepreneurial kind and more open and more innovation-driven state. And now Sweden serves as a prime example for us, for instance, here in Austria. We are, I think, stuck in the situation you describe, and it's all about leaders. And I think this was something that came up yesterday. It's about truth-seeking. So I think this is also something we all have in common. So we share joint visions, joint goals, and it's not so important if you work here or there in your silo or the other silo, but we should kind of come up with a joint vision on where we would like to develop to, and there are cases, but I'm certainly aware of the many obstacles of states which hamper entrepreneurial success and so forth.
Okay, Marcus, thank you very much. That leads us to a question that our participants on Slido asked for Carlotta. Which governments do you see that are doing...
Shall I add just a little thing to that?
Yeah.
You know, consultants for about 30 years now have been telling business what to do, and there has been this public-private partnership thing where it's the private sector that does it because the government is not supposed to, but nobody has bothered to go into government and change government so that leadership is correct, so that people participate, so that there is connection with the public, so that you don't have bureaucracy. I mean, how could the governments, you know, instead of changing themselves, they just hand over the job? And that's a big mistake. So yes, full transformation inside government, just the same way as companies have had to do and still have to do. And everything that the leadership people said is also applicable to governments. And we've got to think that way. And that means municipal government, regional government, national government, supranational government, all the layers.
Could you give just a
Need to
few
stop being
examples?
bureaucratic.
Which
Sorry?
are governments that are doing a good job?
Which ones are doing? I would say the Scandinavian ones are
Yeah.
trying hard. Sweden, Finland is trying, Norway, Canada, some things in California, some things. It's happening here and there.
Okay.
But we need to learn. Germany is also doing interesting things.
Okay, good.
I would say just one last country is Singapore. I think we can learn an enormous amount from them. They're not exactly the same kind of political structure, obviously, than we are here, but they're becoming a democracy. They're on the way to becoming a democracy. And they have taken all these things to heart. All the things that you've mentioned, they're trying to do in their own way. And they do it with the right kind of incentives so they don't turn into kind of, with all kinds of side effects. They try and really be thoughtful about it. I would say they're the only country I know that really believes in continuous learning, which is absolutely required in the world that moves so fast because things become obsolete really fast. So I think we can learn a lot from them.
Okay, great, thank you. Just a very quick comment.
I just want to remind everyone that corporations are sometimes we only think of corporations working with government to get favors and ways of doing business. But if you leave that aside, gets a lot of noise, but not necessarily a lot of activity. Companies need healthy employees, safe employees that can easily go to work. So there is an absolute natural opportunity for government, and quite often regional and local government, more than national government. Think of the big mega cities around the world for corporations and government to work smartly together to make sure that people have a good quality of life, a good education, and a good health
So
care.
it's not an either or, but an and.
Exactly.
Mutual, it's an ecosystem.
Exactly.
Okay, fine. Quickly?
I just wanted to add, I think that to augment what Carlotta said, is that I think that there's an opportunity for co-creation between private, public sector, and the social sector as well. And I actually see some of this collaborative environment happening more at the local level. I've worked with a lot of chambers of commerce where in local geographies where they have a lot of universities and colleges with a lot of young people, and then they see this brain drain where all the young people leave that geography, like a place like Buffalo, upstate New York, or Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and they're trying to figure out how do we make this place attractive at all different levels and dimensions, so everybody comes together and sits at the table and creates that future. So I think that that's a big piece that's missing.
Right, thank you. I just want to pick a second question from Slido. Addressed to Sydney, isn't the raising the bar paradigm part of the disengagement problem, or not rather the solution?
I did say earlier about motivating people, raising the bar, creating a performance-driven culture, and I stick with it. High aspiration people, that's what they want.
That's your conviction.
That's what they want, and I don't think it's a problem at all. Okay. In fact, I don't think you can accomplish anything unless people really want to go for it. The best leaders have the ability to excite people, to energize people, and this is true for government leaders and it's true for corporate leaders as well. So I think it's exactly the right thing we need to do.
Good, thank you. Two more questions from the audience, over here and over there. The mic.
Just a quick question to Carlotta. I loved your historical overview. I was just wondering, what were the roles of the two world wars, World War I and World War II, in your model?
Okay, thank you. Question number 2 over there.
My question is, in the absence of social response from the government, what should management do?
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So the first question was again addressed to Carlotta.
To the war one?
Yeah.
Well, I did a lot of research trying to figure out, did the wars actually have anything to do with the pattern of technological revolutions? And I came to the conclusion that no. The pattern does not hold. I look at, I mean, of course, there was the Napoleonic Wars in the first revolution, but that didn't really It wasn't really the basis. However, in most cases, in the case of the Napoleonic Wars, it actually, because they suspended convertibility, they managed to do everything for the war and help canals and roads and ports and things together with the actual cotton industry and all these things, and agriculture, increased productivity. So it was a demand facilitator. The First and Second World Wars did. The first one actually got the US as the supplier, and it hit Germany very badly, so it allowed the US to become the leader rather than Germany. They were fighting more or less equally, trying to get up there, vying for the leadership. But the Second World War did make a huge change. It allowed American industry to discover mass production truly. And because they did this amazing thing of mass producing airplanes, I think they produced one a day or something like that, and mass producing everything, they realized what they could do, and they also learned a very important thing, that they could work with government. And that it was good business, because government procurement was fantastic, and that government could help them. So in fact, the whole of the post-war boom, all the state intervention, I would say, was thanks to the cooperation in the war. And when they had the highest rate of income tax during the first 10 years after the war, was above 90%. 92% was the highest rate, and it was being paid in the US without a word. It's because all that money that went to the state came back as demand. And that's something that we need to do now with financial transactions tax in order to fund full global development.
Which brings us
Sorry to put that little thing, that little detail into my answer.
Which brings us a bit to the second question: what should management do if there's no social response, and I assume from the state or support? What should management do? I address it to everyone. It's really
work with government.
So I have two suggestions. Number one, there are cases where the government has actually been incompetent, and companies have stepped in extreme situations. I think about hurricanes, Hurricane Katrina in the US, where if it wasn't for the efforts of local companies and some national companies that marshaled resources much more quickly and effectively, I think it would have been even worse. I'm not saying that is a pattern or always the case, but that is an example. And I think the second is something that's happening more and more in the US for sure, perhaps globally, and that is senior leaders of corporations speaking out on social issues, especially when there are governments that are espousing values that are quite inconsistent with what most people in these companies really believe in. We've seen that among many of the Silicon Valley companies, speaking in favor or in support of gay rights, of gay marriage, of minority rights. And that has hardly ever happened, certainly in the US, where most corporate leaders will fall into line and not want to stick their head out. This is happening now quite a bit, and I think that's a very positive sign.
Yeah, okay. Just if they don't just pay lip service, so that they actually act on it and follow the...
You know, lip service is not the right word to use in this case, because they could pay a big price by speaking up, because not everyone's going to like what they have to say. There's a diverse population. Some people are going to hate it, and so they could pay a price. Number one. Number two, it goes against what their job really is, technically speaking, which is maximizing shareholder value. So they're taking a risk, and I think in every one of these instances that at least I'm aware of, they really believe what they're saying.
Yeah. Okay. We have two questions from Slido, addressed to Tammy. Very broad questions, but probably you could squeeze it. You have said already a lot. But the question is, how does a leader create the environment in which people can give their best? In a nutshell, what would you respond?
Well, that is a broad question. And I think my simple answer would be, it starts with deciding that that's how you want to run your organization. There's almost a leap of faith. It's a little bit like that parlor trick of falling backward and assume you're going to be caught by all of your friends standing behind you. At some point, you have to make the decision that getting the intelligence of the people in your organization to come to the fore is, in fact, what will make your organization successful. And once you've come to that conclusion, then the way you treat them, the kinds of ways you interact with them around questions, the acceptance you have of the different ideas they may bring forward, I think those kinds of things follow. But it starts really with the realization that you're working with a team of adults, all of whom have something to contribute.
And that's what the millennials want.
True. So I would say 3 things a leader needs to do. First is role model. Role model those inclusive behaviors. Make sure that you are setting up the structure, the systems, a culture that allows people to speak up and feel like they can share. The second is accountability. So when someone isn't modeling those values, regardless of the results they bring in for the organization, that they're told shouldn't be a part of the organization anymore. If they don't role model the values that you believe will encourage inclusion and encourage diversity. So the third part then is storytelling, actually. So what we found is that a lot of times executives get storytelling training, so they can speak to the media or speak to their customers or their employees, but everybody should be taught how the power of storytelling can help you share your personal background and what's unique about your perspective, and then figure out how to apply that to the business and how you can innovate. And I think that makes others vulnerable enough to share their story, and that I think will change the culture.
Okay, thank you very much. I just take
And if I may add one thing, sorry, I think it's also for leaders and managers embracing the belief that people actually want to do the right thing. People want to contribute, they want to live interesting life, they want success, they want to learn, they want to do the right thing. So I think it's a mind shift change that is fundamental to be able to do what Tammy and John were suggesting, is you got to start by thinking that the people that work with you, they want to do the right thing. And our job is really to help them be in a position where they can contribute.
Absolutely, yeah. I just take one question, in this case from Slido, so that we are faster. Focusing on, it's a question again to Carlotta, but to everyone else, focusing on intangibles and services. Does it mean higher value added and a step towards universal basic income? How does the latter correspond to job creation? This is a topic that's prevalent. What's your opinion? And
you
the of the others, of course.
touched a very, very important theme. I am all for basic income. I think the welfare state is completely bureaucratic, completely incapable of working in a society where jobs for life are no longer possible. To prove that you're employed or unemployed if you work for Uber or if you're self-employed is impossible. And therefore, that's obsolete. We cannot have that. Whether it's basic income or not, that's another question. I think basic income is the correct thing. I think it would allow people to do startups, to become a musician, to do whatever, live with their parents for a while. You have to give people enough to be, especially in the advanced countries, of course, then the other thing would be different. I think you have to give it to everybody, including millionaires. Everybody will give it back in their taxes, as soon all people who pay taxes. You will only keep the people who don't have taxes, and those people will want to work. They will feel dignified, and they will do that. I'm all for basic income.
You
it's
in
a
favor of it?
fantastic solution.
You in favor of it? Someone against it? Or what are the counter arguments to it?
Sorry, I didn't get what he said.
Yeah, we have to finish, unfortunately, but there's ample room to continue this discussion on Slido, and I invite everyone to do that. And I invite now Andrew to continue with the fireworks.